Good evening,
Well,
Texas 30. My name is Kendall Locke, and I'll be serving as tonight's moderator. Thank you for joining our first town hall of 2025. Our office hosts these live, interactive teletown halls as an opportunity for you to hear directly from your Congresswoman, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and to provide a space for you to engage with our office. This evening, you'll learn more about the recent passage of the Continuing Resolution Bill, hear directly from our Dallas VA on resources available to our veterans across North Texas, learn more about how Dallas County is combating the rise in the measles outbreak, and much more. As I mentioned, this is an interactive event, and we would love to hear from you. We will be taking as many questions as possible, time permitting. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you will be placed in line to speak with a member of our team. They will take down your name and your question. If you are streaming the event on our website, you can simply type your name and question below the streaming player. If we are not able to address your question live, please feel free to leave a voicemail after the event. Send us an email at tx30.crockett@mail.house.gov or call our office at 202-225-8885. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press *3 on your phone keypad or type them below the streaming player if you're viewing online. Also, if you aren't already subscribed to our weekly newsletter, please press *6 to subscribe. I'm now turning it over to our Congresswoman, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
well, good evening, Texas 30. I was a little excited. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join me for my first teletown hall of 2025. This is your Congresswoman, Jasmine Crockett, and I proudly represent you in the United States Congress. I know that a lot has happened since the last time I spoke with you, but I must start with the current state of our government. Listen, Donald Trump and his friend, or should I say his co-president or his queen, whatever you want to call Elon, are literally ruining our country and simultaneously running it into the ground. We aren't even 100 days into this new presidency, and the failures of this administration are far and wide. From teetering with the jobs of thousands of federal workers that help ensure that our government runs smoothly, to most recently cutting tons of vital funding for programs that were built to support our most vulnerable neighbors. There is one thing that remains clear. This president has no respect for the common man. He doesn't care about me, you, or the thousands of people who are struggling to make it day to day. Instead, he would rather ensure that his billionaire buddies are supported with tax breaks, unfettered access to our government, and much more. Let me first say this to you. You are not alone. Although things may seem never-ending and the attacks on our rights and communities continue to be rampant, know that I wake up every single day with one group of people in mind, and that is you, my constituents. You see, it is you that gives me the strength to passionately and unapologetically stand up against ridiculous, racist rhetoric, even if it comes from a bleach blonde, bad-built butch body colleague of mine. It is you who allows me to never forget that while we've come so far in this country, the struggle for our basic rights is never really over. And most importantly, it is you, the people, that when times get hard and I grow a little weary, can lighten my day and renew my spirit to keep pressing on. Now, I know many of you were like me and didn't know whether or not our government was shut down last week. For those of you that may be lost, let me catch you up. This past Friday, March 14th, marked an important deadline in which Congress needed to pass legislation in order to fund the government for the rest of the fiscal year. The fiscal year begins on October 1 and ends on September 30th. While a continuing resolution was passed and our government is quote-unquote open, let me be clear, this Republican partisan piece of legislation does nothing but hurt us. The bill that passed both the House and Senate essentially provides a blank check to Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and their Republican cronies to fill their pockets and continue dismantling the most important parts of our government. So instead of me just saying that this legislation passed was horrible and will hurt millions of people, let me put things into reality for you. The legislation passed by Congress cuts billions of dollars in rental assistance funds that we provide directly to our neighbors in need, which will place roughly 32,000 families at risk of being evicted from their homes. So let me just clarify this, because I want you to really conceptualize these numbers. So as I talked to the ranking member of Appropriations, Ranking Member DeLauro, and we were going over some of the numbers, what you have to understand is that based upon the current allotment of housing vouchers, they did not allot enough money for at least 32,000 homes that are currently receiving housing vouchers. Now, this does not account for the increase that we will see in those that need housing vouchers as people are losing their jobs both in the public sector as well as the private sector. So what we're saying is that we're not meeting the current needs. And a normal continuing resolution, or CR, is something that basically keeps funding levels at the same level until we do our homework, which is to actually go through the 12 appropriations bills where we lay out line by line how these dollars will be spent. $16.8 billion for health care to veterans who were harmed by toxins and burn pits while protecting our country. So basically, we passed legislation that was going to increase access to health care based upon those veterans that were harmed due to their service. This legislation was passed under the Biden-Harris administration, and essentially the monies that have been allotted by previous legislation, they are basically saying we are not going to go forward with that funding, and we're going to take that money away from our veterans. $2 billion that goes directly to our families or directly to our cities for improving and repairing bridges, highways, and roads across our communities. $482 million in FAA airport improvement projects, which at a time when our neighbors are concerned about federal safety and whether or not they are safe to fly this upcoming spring and summer season, is more than needed. $75 million for training programs that help our neighbors get jobs after being laid off, which is at an all-time high, especially with the constant firings from our across our federal agencies. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But put a pin in that. Yes, we are currently, or I shouldn't say we, this administration is currently rampantly firing people, but I do want to put a pin there for a second. $40 million in election security grants that are used to protect the integrity and results of our elections. Remember when some people were screaming about election integrity? Well, now they're rolling back the funds for that. So you do with that what you want to do with it. And the list of cuts goes on and on. Additionally, there was no inclusion of new federal funds to help families and our communities get back on their feet and rebuild after being impacted by recent federal disasters. So I need y'all to understand that what we had allotted was not enough for the current needs of FEMA. That was before we just saw these most recent storms that went through the Midwest that have left, last I knew was 34 people deceased. We did not have enough money to take care of the current crises that were on the ground. And now we're getting more, and there was no inclusion of additional dollars for that. And with the passage of this Republican continuing resolution, they have decided to no longer direct money to the National Institute of Health to be used specifically for healthcare and medical research to address deadly diseases such as cancer, Alzheimer's, or when we start looking at diabetes, heart disease, things like that. Listen, y'all, I don't know what else I need to say. The Republicans have showed us their hands, and I'm pretty sure that they're saying that there is a saying that goes, I can show you better than I can tell you. Listen, they have literally shown us through their regressive policies that they don't care about us. There was a chance to show our neighbors good faith, an opportunity to stand up for the middle class, an opportunity to show our neighbors that their health, safety, and welfare mattered, an opportunity to do what's right, not what's in the best interest of a particular political party. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I didn't run for Congress to play political games. I ran because I wanted to be your advocate and ensure that the needs of all Americans are championed. and I wanted to actually get things done for you. It is for these reasons that I voted no on the Republican CR. That I want the government to shut down? Absolutely not. However, I wouldn't dare support something that harms and makes life more difficult for my constituents, many of whom continue to struggle and be impacted by the adverse effects of this administration. Outside of the CR, and while Republicans may seem to be dysfunctional, well, I guess I shouldn't say they seem to be dysfunctional because they are dysfunctional, we are in a new Congress, which means we have new opportunities to advance our important work. Now, I will be honest, the Republicans are currently in control of not just the House, but the Senate and White House. But if the 118th Congress only taught us one thing, it is how unproductive and unfit Republicans are at leading and governing. But their incompetence has not stopped me from keeping my feet on the ground and ensuring that Texas 30 doesn't get the short end of the stick. In this new Congress, I am continuing my service on the important Oversight and Government Reform Committee, where my colleagues elected me as the vice-ranking member, meaning the second highest Democrat on the committee. Between my work on the full committee and serving on the DOGE subcommittee, I'm committed to holding Trump, Elon Musk, and Republicans accountable for illegally firing our federal employees, refusing to distribute lawful, congressionally authorized and mandated resources for important safety net programs to our communities, and attempting to redistribute federal money to their wealthy friends in the form of tax cuts. Additionally, this Congress, I've been appointed to serve on the House Judiciary Committee. In addition to serving on the Immigration Subcommittee, I have also been appointed to serve as the ranking member of the Oversight Subcommittee on Judiciary. Now, many of you know that I was a former public defender as well as civil rights and criminal defense attorney, so serving on this committee allows me to continue my fight protecting American civil rights and liberties, improving our criminal justice system, overseeing the administration in our federal courts, and holding this Department of Justice accountable. Make no mistake, this administration is a direct threat to our legal system and our democracy, whether it's Trump and his DOJ refusing to comply with court orders from federal judges, attacking and prosecuting businesses and people for exercising their constitutional freedom of speech, or simply weaponizing the nation's top law enforcement agency to go after people who refuse to basically worship Trump. Sorry. These actions cannot stand, and I am putting in the work each and every day to hold them accountable. Outside of my committee work, I've remained committed to introducing bipartisan legislation that will uplift our communities and help our district thrive. We all know a war on drugs never solves the underlying crisis that many people are fighting addiction every single day. What history has taught us is that we need resources and education to help our communities. That's why this Congress I have introduced legislation to address the fentanyl and xylazine crisis by ensuring our hospitals, communities, and first responders have access to fentanyl and xylazine testing strips and overdose prevention resources. Additionally, in the wake of all the natural disasters such as the wildfires or deadly tornadoes or hurricanes, we've seen thousands of families and people lose their homes and their jobs because of the destruction that occurs. So to help disaster victims get back on their feet, I introduced tax legislation that incentivizes businesses to employ and get these individuals back to work to be able to rebuild their lives and communities. While there are a few more bills I've introduced and will be introducing this month, I know that immigration is top of mind for many of you. And in fact, some of you may have even attended my Know Your Rights town hall last month, where I and a few attorneys and organization leaders spoke about the state of immigration right now and the rights each person has. In response to Trump's inhumane approach to immigration, I co-led legislation with my colleague, Congressman Adriano Espaillat, that codifies common sense protections for immigrant communities against immigration enforcement officers coming into sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and religious institutions for the purpose of ICE raids and enforcement. Outside of supporting and drafting smart legislation that puts North Texas first, I'm also looking forward to being home to connect with you, my constituents. As we continue to do so, my district staff and I will continue to host various events across Texas 30 so that we can speak directly to you and hear what you need from us. To talk more about our upcoming events, I'm going to pass this off to my Deputy Chief of Staff, Kendall Locke.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Before I get into upcoming events, I want to remind everyone, if you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our team. Our team has been out and about throughout the district, bringing our office directly to you, our constituents. Our mobile office hours is an opportunity for you to meet members of our district team, get assistance with casework and issues related to federal agencies, and much more. Last week, our team was in the city of DeSoto, and to finish this month, to finish the month out, we have 2 additional mobile office hour events scheduled. Tomorrow, March 18th, our team will be in the city of Glen Heights at the city's community center located at 1938 Southampton Road. I know I mentioned that tomorrow is March 18th. It's actually tomorrow, which is Wednesday, March 19th. But again, we'll be in the city of Glen Heights at the community center. The address is 1938 Southampton Road in the city of Glen Heights, and we will be there from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Our last mobile office hour event for the month of March will take place next week at the E.M. Gillum Memorial Public Library in the city of Wilmer on Tuesday, March 28th from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Additionally, in the month of April, we will host our Service Academy Forum alongside other North Texas congressional offices. This event will take place on Saturday, April the 5th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. During this event, you will meet, hear, and get an opportunity to connect with representatives from our respective service academies, learn more about the nominations and admission process, and much more. And then on Saturday, April the 12th, we will host our 5th annual Kids and Kites event in South Dallas at William Blair Park from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is, of course, an annual event that our office does that's always fun as we fly kites with our kiddos and enjoy some fun in the sun. As always, for more information on our upcoming events, please visit crockett.house.gov. Again, that's crockett.house.gov, and click on the events tab. Lastly, before I turn it back to the Congresswoman, I want to be sure that I mention our congressional art competition, which is now underway. This is an opportunity for high school students from across Texas 30 to showcase their artistic ability for a chance to have their art displayed in the halls of the U.S. Capitol for 1 year. Additionally, the winner of the competition will win a trip to Washington, D.C. to be honored for their accomplishment. All art must be submitted to our district office located at 1825 Market Center Boulevard, Suite 440 here in Dallas, no later than 5 p.m. Central Time on Friday, April the 11th. Again, the deadline for all art is Friday, April the 11th here in our Dallas office. We look forward to seeing all of the amazing designs this year. Remember, if you have a question for the Congresswoman, please press *3 on your phone keypad and you will be placed in line to speak with a member of our team who will take down your name and question. Also, if you aren't already subscribed to our weekly newsletter, again, you're able to do that by pressing *6 on your keypad and you'll be able to subscribe. Turning it back over to you, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, Kendall. Next, I want to bring on my friends from the Dallas sacrifice and put on the uniform to serve and protect our country. To talk a little bit about those resources, I have Bernice Witherspoon, a veteran outreach specialist at the Dallas VA. Bernice, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you for having me. Can everyone hear me? Are we?
You should be good.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to introduce myself. I am the new outreach specialist here at the Dallas VA. Our outreach team is now going around the community and getting more of our veterans involved, especially in the rural areas. As of tomorrow, the main reason I am on here today. Tomorrow we will be having a large Operation Inreach event here at the Dallas VA, 4500 South Lancaster Road, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We will be having about 30 to 35 nonprofit organizations here to help our veterans file claims, ask questions about VA land loans, the Wounded Warrior, Texas Veterans Commission, the Dallas Veteran Service Officers. They will all be here at one time. So instead of our veterans going to shop around, going to these other organizations to see what resources they have, it'll be a one-stop shop all here tomorrow. And I think that's really what we really wanted to put out there, is invite everyone, veteran, non-veterans, if you just want to come out here and get information. We will also be having our services, different clinics, diabetes clinic, our women's clinic, our mental health. They will all be out here to answer questions if any of the veterans. And also myself and my team will be here to assist any veteran who needs to get help with enrolling into the VA healthcare, because now is the time to get enrolled into that healthcare. Since we do not know what the administration has planned for the future, now is the time to get it done. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, Bernice. And, I do appreciate you pointing out the fact that the VA is still open and that there are amazing warriors like you that are there to help our veterans. So regardless of what you see on TV, what I want y'all to know is that it is important that if you are a veteran, if you have a veteran that you love in your life, there is a lot of unpredictability about the future. But what we can tell you is that Bernice and her team, as well as so many others, are right there at the VA to help you right now. And I am begging you to go and get your help because you deserve it. You worked for it. And I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that those resources are not minimized in any way. But this is why we wanted to make sure that we have Bernice on, because I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And Dallas does, and not just Dallas, but our VA that is in our district is the second largest in the country. So take advantage of that. I know that y'all call, y'all have whatever complaints y'all have about the VA, but I do want y'all to know that I am doing my best. And the Congresswoman would come back and hit me if I did not do my best, knowing that she started her career right there at the Dallas VA. So thank you so much, Bernice, for the update, and y'all make sure that y'all reach out. Again, please take advantage of the amazing resources and know that my office is here to assist should you ever have any issues with our VA. Next, I'd like to introduce a familiar voice. If you've joined one of our previous teletown halls, Dr. Philip Wong. Dr. Wong is the director of the Dallas County Health and Human Services. Now, all of us have likely heard about the measles situation. And unfortunately, the stories started being that there was a measles outbreak in Texas, but it wasn't our part of Texas. But now, from what I understand, it is here in our backyard. And so I am so delighted that we have Dr. Wong to talk to us about that. And aside from the measles, we're also in the midst of flu season. Dallas County has a ton of resources, vaccination sites, and great information that you should be aware of as you work to protect yourself, your families, and neighbors. Dr. Wong, I'll let you take it away.
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman Crockett, and thank you so much for all your leadership and everything that you're doing. I know it's so difficult and truly appreciate it. We are in seeing this large measles outbreak centered in West Texas at the start. Measles was declared eliminated in the United States in 2000 because the measles vaccine is so effective and so safe. And it's, most physicians, most healthcare providers have never seen it. I've never seen it before personally. But now we've got the latest number, 279 cases out in West Texas. I think this is more than Texas has seen in 30 years. And then tragically, we had a death in a child. And this is totally preventable because the vaccine works. And so it's really a tragedy that we've seen that. But it has been centered in this large community, I think about 25,000 in West Texas, that do not get vaccinated or have very low vaccination rates. And that's the big susceptibility, because the thing about measles is we have a really effective way to defend against this. And anyone who's worried about it, just what they need to do is, check your status and make sure that you're up to date on your measles vaccine. And, like 2 doses are 97% effective. 1 dose is 93% effective. And it's why we haven't seen measles for so long, because the measles work. But unfortunately, there are these pockets of groups that are, that don't get vaccinated. And unfortunately, what we've seen, recently is more sort of anti-vaccination sentiment, more misinformation, disinformation, sort of untrue information about linking it to autism that has been disproven. The doctor who did that study, lost his medical license. The article was retracted. There have been numerous studies since then that showed it doesn't cause autism, but yet it sort of still circulates out in social media. And then, with COVID, we saw vaccinations being politicized, and it really should not. It's not a political issue. It's a scientific thing, and the vaccines work and are safe, and this is what everyone needs to do. But unfortunately, we're seeing more people not getting the vaccine because of that. And then also, we're also a victim of our own success because the vaccines are so effective. People haven't seen it, and they start to say, well, I don't see measles. Why do I need to get a vaccine? And so that's where we are now. As the Congresswoman mentioned, it's been in West Texas, but we have now had some cases that are linked to the West Texas cases in the Paris-Lamar County area. So we're definitely watching that very closely. Locally in Dallas, the main thing to do is, get everyone vaccinated, but also identify any pockets of populations that have low vaccination rates, because those are really the vulnerable groups. If everyone's vaccinated, or, there are some people who legitimately can't take the vaccine because maybe they're on immunosuppressive medications or cancer treatment, or immunocompromised, or even pregnant women can't get the vaccine at that time. And so you want to protect those people who can't take the vaccine by getting that herd immunity and getting as many people around them protected, because that protects everyone, even ones who legitimately can't take the vaccine. But when you have large groups of people that then are not vaccinated, that's what is a problem. And so we've been trying to identify, school districts. I sent out a letter to all of the superintendents and all our public ISDs, and then the private schools, ISDs that have low vaccination rates and high opt-out rates, and to try to encourage them, give educational materials, sent letters to the parents, and we've offered and already provided some vaccine pop-up clinics at some of these schools to help get their kids up to date on their vaccine, because that's what it will take to stop this, and that's how everyone can protect themselves. But it's unfortunate we're seeing this, but we are doing everything we can to address this. I think we're working with, had some, our own sort of almost town hall with physicians, healthcare providers, hospital infection control people. And then we had one also with school nurses and school health staff to educate everyone on what to do if we do get any cases and how we're going to respond to it. We've been updating and modernizing all of our data systems so that we're not dealing with paper, fax lab reports and manually entering that stuff, but able to get any reports in electronically and visualize the data and, respond to it, and also building up some of our lab capabilities. So, we're doing everything we can to be prepared, but it's a simple way for everyone to stop this and to get up to date on your vaccines. And I think I'll stop there, but happy to answer any questions or anything.
So, Dr. Wong, just because we've got a couple of minutes, we're a little ahead of schedule, so I do want to take this opportunity. We have a lot of, the polite way of saying it is misinformation and disinformation. The straight up real way to say it is that we got a lot of people that are lying, and it is costing people lives as it relates to vaccines, right? And so can you just give us, just generally speaking, if you were talking to a class of elementary students instead of, say, other doctors, an idea of how safe it is to, say, take the measles vaccine? There are those that act like you're going to grow a dragon's head out your neck, but talk to us, because every medication that we take comes with some kind of risk, right? Even if we're talking about aspirin or ibuprofen or some over the counters, right? But if you had to say, you know what, let me tell you what a comparable something that you're familiar with, what the risk looks like for something going wrong with that versus this, what type of comparison would you give us?
Sure. Well, let me start that, the measles vaccine became available in 1963. Before 1963, we had 3 to 4 million cases of measles in the United States each year. We had 450 deaths in the United States each year from measles. And then because after the vaccine was introduced, we got down to, in the year 2000, it was declared eliminated. You don't see measles. We haven't seen measles. Most people have not seen measles. So that's one way to show, how effective, how important it is to get the vaccine, and how safe. Millions and millions of people have gotten this vaccine. Now, there are some other numbers, and so I say that if you don't, you have to also compare it to what are the side effects or the effects if you don't get the vaccine. And so there's some sort of estimates. If there were 10,000 people who didn't do the vaccine and got measles, out of that 10,000 people, you'd have 2,000 people hospitalized, 500 children getting pneumonia, which is the most common cause of death from measles, and you'd get, just out of that 10,000 people, about 10 to 30 child deaths from respiratory or neurologic complications. Now, out of that same 10,000 people, if you gave them all the MMR vaccine, you would estimated get 3 fever-related seizures and 0.035 allergic reactions. So, you compare side effects and, with what happens if you don't get that vaccine, and, you're going to get 10 to 30 deaths in that 10,000 people.
Yeah. Let me ask you one other question, and then I'll move on. And it is this idea. Measles, chickenpox, they're all the same. What's the big difference? Because, and this isn't me saying this, y'all, I am trying to make sure that since we do have Dr. Wong, and I want y'all to know how hard this man works as well. We are sitting here on this teletown hall, but just know that beyond trying to keep you all safe here in Dallas County, this man was up on the Hill just here recently, and he was lobbying as well and trying to make sure that y'all are able to stay safe by making sure that we're getting some of that funding that typically comes into his office and all those things. So I just want y'all to know that he never stops advocating for your safety. And so I want you to know that if he's sitting here and he's advocating for, say, some sort of a vaccine, it is to keep us safe. It's not to harm us. It's to keep us safe. But for those out there, Dr. Wong, who are I've had the chicken pox, and so it can't be that bad because this is just like the chicken pox. What would you say to that?
Well, they're different viruses, and still, we actually recommend you take the vaccine for the chicken pox because, sometimes, they're not as severe cases, but again, just like the measles, you can get very severe illness and, severe complications and, sometimes even death. And so it's important to get the vaccines to prevent these vaccine preventable diseases. But, one of the other things just with measles, both chickenpox and measles are incredibly easy to spread. And, just for measles is sort of the model for how easy it's spread, that, if someone is coughs in a room and then leaves that room, it's still in the air for like 2 hours. And 90% of any people who would go in that room who aren't vaccinated would be expected to come down with measles. It's just so easy. But, they both do have some of the similar symptoms. But, the rash for measles is more of, it starts right around like the scalp line and goes down the rest, down the body. The chickenpox rash is more like fluid blisters that, spread and are fluid filled and things. So there are differences, but still both of them are vaccine preventable, and it is so much better to get that vaccine to prevent the symptoms that you would get with either of those and some of the complications that can be very serious.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate you as always, and it is now time to get to the part that everybody has been waiting on, and that is questions. So, Kendall, I'm going to let you lead this part. Tell us what the questions are. I hope you got the answers, too.
Okay, Congresswoman. So I will mention just again, if anyone has not gotten their question in and they want to get a last-minute question in, press *3 on your keypad. Of course, if you are watching online, feel free to type it underneath the streaming player. But, Congresswoman, our first question comes from Micah. He asked, what happens now that Trump is starting to defy court orders?
Ooh, child. Now, Micah, you asking a lot of me. I know that my initials are JC, but they definitely don't stand for Jesus Christ. I truly don't know. Let me tell you what my thoughts are, and that's pretty much all that I can give you. If I was still operating in a world prior to having a Supreme Court that has given Trump any level of immunity, or if I had to take a guess in a world that is prior to a convicted felon being able to enter the White House, not being able to be kicked off the ballot, not being able to be taken to trial for an insurrection. Listen, the list goes on. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel like the student loans that I'm continuing to pay back for law school should all be forgiven, because it seems like legal norms are not truly functioning in the way that I was taught, right? Looking at legal precedents and things like that. In short, we are in a constitutional crisis. We have been in a constitutional crisis, and it is only being further exacerbated every single day. So with Trump violating a court order, typically, if it was anybody but the president, and technically no one is above the law, allegedly, but again, the Supreme Court gave him that immunity, and I think he's flexing with it right now, daring them to do anything else. Technically, when you violate a court order, you are to be called in for a contempt hearing. In that contempt hearing, you are to be given an opportunity to basically go through due process. And in that due process hearing, explaining like, oh, I wasn't on actual notice of the court's order, or, I misunderstood the court's order. It could have been, interpreted different ways, or my counsel did not convey it to this other. Like, you're able to kind of give explanations for why the court should not find that you blatantly disregarded and said to hell with what the court said. And it's usually in that hearing which the judge, who is the exclusive jurist over determining whether or not you truly should be held in contempt, then the court then decides how to deal with that contempt. Is it in the form of incarceration? Is it in the form of paying money? Is it like, what is the form? And so this is very different, because we're not used to a whole president or his administration disobeying a court order. And so what do you do, right? Like, does it present a further issue if you incarcerate the president? far as I'm concerned, he should have been incarcerated a long time ago. So, no, it doesn't present a different issue. He's not doing nothing but signing executive orders anyway. He can do that from a jail cell, as far as I'm concerned. So, we will see how the judge decides that they want to deal with this. Usually they don't jump to jail immediately. Usually if they find that you're in contempt, they usually jump to some kind of money. The problem is that there's usually limits on how much money, and there's usually limits on, how long you can incarcerate someone, because it's not the same as kind of being charged with like a crime per se, right? So the issue that we run into is that we don't want the federal government, we don't want our tax dollars to pay for him and his wrongdoing, right? So it needs to be personal. It needs to be personal liability. And so that gets a little tricky as well, because this was all done in official capacity and not personal capacity. And then it's like whatever limits they have, it's a drop in the bucket to Trump. He doesn't care. It would be a drop in the bucket. We're not talking about, usually you can't get contempt and tax somebody like $1 million. You can't do that. But that's the only thing that he would potentially feel. So, I think that everything that we're seeing, though, is additional fodder for us to create a record of why he should be impeached. And I know so many of you are probably wondering why hasn't he been impeached yet and that kind of stuff. It's simply a numbers game for us, right? We don't have the numbers. And right now, we don't have Republican colleagues that are about doing what's right. We do know with this continuing resolution that was passed, and we do know that with reconciliation that will be coming up, which is where they are going to go after Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, when that happens and we're unable to block it, which was another problem with them going forward, the Senate Democrats helping them by going forward, it was the only time that we had leverage. And so I'm sure many of you don't remember, but we were trying to get the debt ceiling raised at some point during Biden's administration. It may have been my first year of the Biden administration. And we were trying to get the debt ceiling raised. And the Republicans decided to deal with cuts to our budget during the debt ceiling fight, when the two are completely separate. The budget, again, as we laid out, that goes from September 30 to September 30. So essentially what has happened, and I don't know how often this has happened, if it's happened ever, is that the Republicans who have controlled the House since I've been in Congress have failed, along with now the Republican-controlled Senate, to do the 12 appropriations bills for one fiscal year. Instead, they just did what is supposed to be a Band-Aid, and that's it. It's just supposed to be a Band-Aid to keep the government open. It is not supposed to be the whole shebang. And so what we were saying from the House perspective, because we don't have a filibuster in the House, is that the Senate Democrats needed to get assurances on Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security written into the continuing resolution, but they needed to get something for us, because by the time we get to reconciliation, we have nothing. They just get a simple majority. And so this was our only time, and they didn't get anything. So I say all that to say that we don't have Republicans that are simply invested in doing what's best by their communities, because Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, that affects everyone no matter what their political affiliation is. The only people that may be immune from this are the very rich people who don't need it, okay? And so it may be once their constituents lose all of their services and they get mad and they start believing that they're going to lose their elections, that we could actually push forward with some sort of an impeachment. But remember, he was successfully impeached in the House twice, and the Senate was run by Republicans, and they failed to convict him last time. And right now, the Senate is run by Republicans again, and so I don't know that we could get a conviction if we could go so far, but at least we can start making a very sound record, including by starting with the fact that he is not obeying court orders and has truly said that it's okay for him to be lawless. And then Holman went out there and said, forget it, we will ignore the law if we need to, as well as his Department of Justice head has said the same thing. And this also may be groundwork for some of those other people in his administration to be impeached later on down the road. And I don't think the Republicans are half as afraid of some of these people that have been appointed within the administration. They're not as afraid of them as they are of Trump. Okay, sorry for the long answer, but I hope that was comprehensive enough for you. Kendall, go ahead and go to the next one.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Tilo. They ask, what can be done to reverse the dismantling of U.S. aid?
All right, so this is a great question, but let me give a quick overview for everyone that may not really understand the importance of USAID, as well as really getting some clarity on the amount of money that USAID takes up. So what they've decided to do is they've decided to pit Americans against USAID because it's just like, oh, there's so much money and it's leaving the country and we need the money in our communities. And I'm not saying that that's not a very real thing, that we need the money in our communities. In fact, unfortunately, with this Republican CR, there was a lot of money that was supposed to come to our district that now most likely will go into Elon's pockets. But USAID, overall, if we look at our entire budget, even though I know they throw out big numbers that are bigger than what we have in our own individual bank accounts, USAID accounts for less than 1% of our entire budget. So right now, they're trying to get people mad and irate about less than 1% so that they don't have to talk about the other 99.5%, right? So that's number one. Number two, we go on congressional delegation trips. I usually do not post them because I don't think that most people really understand that part of our jobs is to be international diplomats. And so, you know, one of the reasons that I was very concerned about this administration coming in is because of conversations that I've been able to have with emirs, prime ministers, presidents of other countries, as I have traveled the world and had conversations about what it was like to deal with the previous administration with them. So that's that part. The other part of it is that when we go, we're usually checking in on the programs that the United States is funding, whether these are programs to eradicate things such as HIV and AIDS. So as we know, or if we think back, if you're old enough, in the 90s, you know, it was number one, absolutely a death sentence if you were diagnosed, and people were just so sick, right? And so we had to work on the medicine and really get it up to snuff. And they're still working on medicine, hopefully, even though, as I already talked about, the NIH funds, that would have been another bucket that we would have had specifically designated for HIV and AIDS research. But when we start to talk about things like global pandemics, right, when we talk about COVID-19, or when we even talk about HIV AIDS, it was a global problem and disaster. And so they found that with sex education, that was helping to kind of help out with people not getting as sick just by putting sex ed in, even though I know that's something right now that many Republicans are trying to remove from schools. But it helped not only with teen pregnancy, but it also helped with dismantling some of the transfer of various diseases. But also, when you're looking at things like this that can spread so rapidly throughout the world, what we've done is we've been able to help out in underdeveloped countries to make sure that they have access to things such as condoms, to make sure that they have access to the sex education, make sure that they have access to the medications, that even if they are diagnosed with HIV, that it does not end up becoming full-blown AIDS, making sure that they're keeping their counts down and things like that. So I had an opportunity last year to go into a couple of different countries in Africa and see how they are creating programs for young girls so that they are more than kind of just out there with nothing to do, so to speak. And so we were able to see the different skills that they're teaching them. I was able to buy products from them, things that they made, different crafts. I bought a purse and all kinds of random things. And so they're helping them to become their own entrepreneurs. And they're really making sure that they can imagine and see themselves as something other than a possession of a man, because some of this stuff is kind of cultural. So there was like cultural things that we've been fighting against consistently in various countries as well. And really what we do is we try to show people that freedom and democracy is the way and that there are opportunities for everyone. And so by doing that, we keep down the hostilities, not only abroad, but hostilities towards us. And we also end up building like a real rapport with so many countries around the world. And right now, the fear has been, and what we consistently had conversations about, was China. And that China is like, if you just think of some gangsters, it's like, you know what, you're desperate for money, you're desperate for whatever it is, and you go to the gangster or the loan shark, right? And you go and get it from them, and then you're basically going to owe everything to them, right? And so we've been competing with China because what China ends up doing is kind of influencing other portions of the world to hate us. So for less than 1% of our budget, it helps to keep us safe while also doing some good. That is what it is about. So now that I've gone on that long explanation of it, but I thought it was really important because I know a lot of people don't fully understand it. Today, a federal judge ordered the reinstatement of USAID functions and placed a preliminary injunction on DOJ to stop further attempts to dismantle the agency. The court also demanded that DOJ reinstate access to email, payments, security notifications, and other electronic systems, including restoring deleted emails for current USAID employees. As I have said since January, and now the federal courts agree, Trump and Elon Musk violated the Constitution when it effectively shuttered the agency. I'll continue working with my colleagues in Congress to fight back against this administration's attempt to illegally dismantle independent federal agencies. There are still ongoing court cases, and more will come as we fight to reverse the dismantling of USAID. And the reason that I say that it's illegal is because the existence of USAID, it only exists because of it was created through Congress. And so it can only be shut down and dismantled through Congress. And so I can't say that they won't have the votes to do that. They may, because they control every lever, but they're going to have to go through the process of fully dismantling USAID if that is what they're going to do. So thank you so much for the question. I really do appreciate it. And Kendall, go ahead.
Thanks, Congresswoman. We may have time for two more questions, but this next question comes from Coley. They ask, with school vouchers happening in Texas and the current administration trying to abolish the Department of Education, how are we going to make sure our children continue to receive adequate education?
Oh, child, this feels like an SAT question. I don't have any good answers for this. I can tell you that your voices mattered last session down in Austin as it relates to the vouchers, and it really pissed off Governor Abbott because he decided to sink millions and millions of dollars into Republicans that voted against him. But they understood, even though they never stand up against him and make sure that we expand on Medicaid. And so rural hospitals are shutting down every single day. I don't know why they're not fighting for that. But nevertheless, a lot of people lost their seats. And so, we're going to have to think smarter about this. If people live in a Republican district, then at least the Republican stands up and does the right thing on this. And then next thing you know, Abbott tries to put somebody else in, then we may have to think long and hard about how we vote and, whatever. So that's that part of it from a state perspective. So do not let up. I think that James Tallarico is really kind of leading the way on this issue as a former public school teacher. He's very passionate about it. So I say make sure you're keeping up with updates from Rep. Tallarico and make sure you're listening to any suggestions that he makes. So that's number one from a state level. From a federal level, again, Department of Education, this is going to end up taking an act of Congress, but they are going through the dismantling of it. We know that 50% of those that are currently at the Department of Education recently lost their jobs, but we are not only fighting in the courts, because it's great to say I'm fighting, like I'm fighting in Congress. Can't say I'm really having a lot of wins in Congress, but I am fighting like hell in Congress. But when it comes to the court, we are not only fighting, but we're winning. And so with what just happened with the Department of Education only being semi-recent, I am looking really forward to seeing kind of what the courts say as it relates to the Department of Education. But we do know that this is right out of the Project 2025 playbook. This is one of those things that we had talked about. And the other thing that's really dangerous that I need to address for those that don't understand is that when it comes down to being able to get a student loan and going through the FAFSA process, that all comes through the Department of Education. So to me, this is like the next level of making sure that only the haves have access to education, kind of like the voucher scam that they're doing on the state level, where only people that even live in places with, private schools have access to that, right? And we know that the private schools are able to say that certain people can't be allowed, but we know that the Supreme Court handed over their terrible affirmative action decision recently. We've seen the enrollment of people of color specifically going down in our higher education schools. And so I look at this as the only people in this country that will be afforded an opportunity at getting any level of education, it seems like, are going to be the privileged few. And that is in combination with what the state is doing, as well as what's happening on the federal level. In addition to that, we know that there is funding as it relates to the school lunch program, whether it's the reduced lunch or free lunches for our kiddos. That actually comes out of the Department of Education too. So in addition to kind of the general things that we're thinking about, the dismantling of access to education, this also is going to prohibit so many people from so many kiddos from being able to eat. We also know that a lot of our funding for our students with disabilities, that also comes out of Department of Education. And so that funding will cease if for some reason we don't have a Department of Education. And then we already know that DOGE specifically went in, and the first thing that they went out after was all of like the civil rights divisions of Department of Education. And so they deal with everything, all the civil rights violations. And so we know that our kids will have less protections overall in their schools because they've decided to dismantle this.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And we are unfortunately at time, so I'm going to turn it back to you to give our closing remarks.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Texas 30. Listen, times are so tough right now, and I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. I know that so many of you did not see me during the election cycle. And to be frank, it was because I did not want us to be here. But we are here. And, I can't say that this is like any other time that we have faced in general in this country. But I can tell you that every single day that I'm given an opportunity to represent you, my resolve is renewed. Whether it is the amazing letters that y'all send to me, yes, my staff scans and emails them to me so that I can see them. I am so very appreciative. The emails y'all send me, the comments that y'all send, that you post on social media, these are the things that remind me that there are 766,000 people that are depending on me to be their voice. And when I was reelected with the best and strongest numbers in the entire state of any challenged member of Congress, Democrat or Republican. And to me, that only said that while the country made one decision, that y'all made a whole other decision. And so I'm honored. I truly am. Like I can never express how thankful I am to not only be a member of Congress, but honestly to be your member of Congress. It really does speak volumes that you took a chance on me. And after taking a chance, you decided to take another chance on me. And so I appreciate that. So I know I've kept y'all. We are a little bit over the hour, but I want to make sure that you have access to all this information. So if my office can be of any assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out. I know that this year has been challenging. I already said that. So we need to make sure that you know my telephone numbers. If you need to call the D.C. office, and I'll be honest, whether you're in Dallas or not, if you have a question about legislation, whether it's something that's on the floor or whether it's a piece of legislation that you feel like we need to be looking at, whether it's signing on to or whether it's legislation that we should create, then D.C. is probably the better office to call because that's where my ledge team is housed. So that number is 202-255-8885. And our Dallas office is 214-922-8885. I'll repeat it. It's 214-922-8885. Now, the Dallas office, for all your cases that you may have with whatever federal agency you're having problems with, that's the number where you're going to follow up on your cases. But we also have an email, and that email address is going to be tx30.crockett@mail.house.gov. Again, that's tx30.crockett@mail.house.gov. And going back to you having cases, VA, Social Security, IRS, passport, whatever it is, it's best if you go to crockett.house.gov, and there's a place there for you to go ahead and sign up and start your case, because there is documentation that we have to have showing that we have the authority to go ahead and contact those agencies on your behalf. So definitely you can go to our website at any point in time. And then I think Kendall will make sure that you've got the information to make sure that you are getting our weekly emails that go into everything that's coming up, as well as making sure that you can see all that I've been doing for the week. So Kendall, tell them what they need to do if they want to get onto our email list.
Yes. So you are able to press *6 on your phone keypad, and it's able to get you subscribe to the email. Also, if you're having any trouble with doing it via phone, feel free to call our Dallas office or the DC office. Give us your information, and we can be sure to get you added.
Or you can go to the website, crockett.house.gov, and you can be added to our weekly email. Thank you so much, Texas 30. I love you. Have a great night.